Welcome to the 700 Club. Billions for vaccines and bigger checks for Americans. President-elect Joe Biden has proposed a major stimulus bill to help the economy recover from the coronavirus. The cost? Nearly $2 trillion.
The president-elect's plan includes $1,400 stimulus checks. Will Congress pass the bill? And if so, how soon? Ben Kennedy has the story from Washington.
Biden's plan aims to speed up vaccines and help those struggling during the pandemic.
And so tonight, I'd like to talk to you about our way forward. A two-step plan of rescue and recovery. A two-step plan to build a bridge to the other side of the crisis we face to a better, stronger, more secure America. Tonight, I'll lay out my first step.
Biden's plan calls for billions for vaccines and bigger stimulus checks for Americans. Under the plan, $400 billion would go towards fighting the pandemic, with the majority of the money being economic relief and aids for states and localities. Also included are $1,400 stimulus checks, on top of the $600 checks from the recent relief bill.
Our rescue plan also includes immediate relief to Americans hardest hit and most in need. We will finish the job of getting a total of $2,000 in cash relief to people who need it the most. The $600 already appropriated is simply not enough. You just have to choose between paying rent and putting food on the table.
Biden says this money is needed now more than ever, as the latest government figures Thursday showed more than 1 million people looking for unemployment assistance from the government.
Countless families and friends left behind with unrelenting grief and guilt, anger and frustration. And the emptiness felt by the loss of life is compounded by the loss of our way of life.
Mark Hamrick of Bankrate told CBN's Faith Nation the new government jobless claims shows the economy still needs help.
And so on the one hand, it shouldn't be terribly surprising because the pandemic is the cause of the downturn, but it can still be shocking. And so that's why it's all the more urgent that the president-elect and elected officials in Washington get to work soon on the next round of stimulus legislation.
Biden's plan also calls for $130 billion to help most schools reopen by spring. Many schools have already done so, and Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam says his state's data indicates that schools can open again with the proper safety standards. But the political outlook in Congress for Biden's plan remains unclear. Republicans are likely to object to certain parts of it, while some Democrats could say it doesn't go far enough. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
Well, I'm concerned about the proposals I'm hearing, and my biggest concern is sending stimulus checks to people who have jobs. And if you're employed, do we really need to increase our national deficit? Are we creating future problems in some kind of vain effort to solve the current problem? But for those who are unemployed, those who are facing eviction, those who are facing foreclosure, let's do whatever we can to help them. I'm somewhat of an amateur photographer, and last night, of all things, I saw an eagle. And I wanted to show you that picture. Here's an eagle perched at the end of a pier. And that's the raw photo because I want you to see the colors in the water. And when you get close to it and you get the close-up shot, there is an eagle. She's facing left, or on her right, her feather's a little ruffled. But in the water is the red, white, and blue. And this photo really encouraged me. The Republic still stands. The flag still waves over the Capitol. We've had a great deal of turmoil. I fully anticipate there's going to be a great deal of turmoil and division in Congress, certainly over the next 100 days and probably over the next 4 years. But the Republic still stands, and we should all be encouraged with that, and we should all pray for America, that somehow we can see a way through all the division and see our way to say we're one nation, and we're under God, and we're indivisible. There are a lot of different voices in the world today, in our country today, asking for more division, more strife. No, let us come together and realize our way of letting our voice be heard as in the ballot box. And there's another election, and it will happen in 2 years, and we get to have our voices heard then. In other news, 100 million vaccinations in his first 100 days. That's President-elect Biden's goal. Can it be achieved? Well, many states are already running into major problems because of the overwhelming demand for the shots. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. John?
That's right, Gordon. The rapid expansion of the vaccinations to senior citizens across the country has led to bottlenecks, system crashes, and other problems across several states. Look at this line of cars in Fresno, California Thursday, more than 2 miles long. People stood in line for hours at the Fresno, California Fairgrounds waiting for a shot. Also in Fresno, hundreds more moved ahead slowly in their cars for at least 2 hours at an orthopedic practice to get drive-through vaccinations.
I've been anxious waiting, because of the virus is so terrible. But I'll wait.
Similar problems are happening in other states like Arizona, New York, and more. The death toll from the virus is now approaching 400,000 here in the United States. Well, right here in Washington, President Trump's second impeachment trial could begin as soon as next Wednesday, the same day President-elect Joe Biden is set to be inaugurated, meaning the trial may start shortly after Biden takes the oath of office. Some Democrats are pushing for a delay to give Biden time to set up his administration. Voters are pretty much evenly split on whether Trump should be removed from office. An NBC News poll finds 50% say he should be removed, while 48% say he should not, within the margin of error. Trump could not actually be taken out of office since the trial will not end until he's already left the White House. Well, in just over 2 months, Israelis will head to the polls for the 4th time in 2 years. As CBN's Chris Mitchell explains from Jerusalem, this time significant changes on the political landscape could majorly affect the results.
The latest election cycle began in late December when Israel's parliament couldn't pass a budget. Failure to meet the deadline automatically triggered the new election, now scheduled for March 23rd. It also ends the 7-month-long contentious coalition led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and retired Chief of Staff Benny Gantz.
The way it looks like the national camp, the right-wing party will get more support. Parties like the Labour Party, Blue and White, I'm not sure we will see them in a few months. But within the right-wing parties, you have a split between those who support the prime minister and those who are not willing to cooperate with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
Middle East analyst Joel Rosenberg says the new election landscape poses a major challenge to Netanyahu and the Likud party because of challenges from the right.
Here's the key. More and more leaders of the smaller parties are saying they will never serve in a Netanyahu government. That is getting close to a critical mass. But if they can't build a coalition because the leaders of almost every other party says they won't serve with Netanyahu, and he's got a huge problem on his hands.
Gideon Sa'ar is now Netanyahu's main challenger. Once a Likud party leader and the prime minister's cabinet secretary, he's moved to form his own party called New Hope.
So now there is a real full right Likud-type alternative. And that's a chink in the armor of Netanyahu, both because he left the party and because he's a legitimate leader, and because he said, and people believe him, he will not sit with Netanyahu.
Netanyahu is putting his campaign's hope on successfully leading Israel out of the COVID pandemic. Israel currently leads the world in vaccinations per capita, and Netanyahu seeks to reopen Israel in time for the March election and Passover. The coronavirus has hit Israel hard.
This is a very big issue, and Israel has never dealt with an economic crisis of this magnitude. So Israelis are very concerned. It affects everything, but they also feel that their leadership, their elected leadership, kind of abandoned them for personal reasons.
Other factors Israeli voters will likely consider include the Iranian threat, Netanyahu's upcoming corruption trial, and the potential impact of a Biden administration on issues like the Abraham Accords. Despite Netanyahu's challenges, Likud remains Israel's strongest political party. If Netanyahu can show significant progress against the coronavirus pandemic, expand the Abraham Accords, and keep Iran at bay, he could again confound experts who have his political obituary already written. The fractured political landscape, however, makes predicting this election's outcome extremely difficult. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Gordon, how do you see all these splintered factions, political factions, affecting Israel's security?
Well, it's been uncertain now. We've been in the uncertainty for over 2 years, and so the one thing that binds them all together is Israel's security. So I'm not concerned about that, but it would be a political miracle for Netanyahu to actually win. There have been so many of the factions. If you think our politics is complicated, imagine 16 parties all competing for places in the Knesset and the parliament, and then trying to cobble together a governing faction from all those various groups. So Netanyahu has been trying. He's been essentially tied. The big news is that Benny Gantz is now out. There was a shared power agreement, and he was supposed to become prime minister. All that's out. If Netanyahu can get the vaccination to every Israeli, if they can make it through the pandemic, then he's got a real shot at winning. But who knows? Their politics is remarkably complicated, and we'll just keep you posted on the results when they come out.